Hello and welcome to another video from earnped.com. I'm Stevie B, happy to have you all with us today. Let's take some big sips to get started. And you guys will notice I am at North Swamp Camp hunting Exarosaur Young level 3. So what is going on? Well, good news is my Codex for Exarosaur was at rank 24.5. And I thought to myself, this would be a good time to go back and look at the drop rate of the Blazar fragments here at North Swamp Camp. To go back and look at the changes that have been made since I first made a video suggesting that new players would benefit from coming here and hunting Exarosaur, and to do a little bit of an experiment to see what kind of results I could get now in June of 2023 to see if this would still be good advice to give out to newer players and low-level players who are just getting started, and maybe they're just starting off at Camp Icarus hunting some puny creatures and want to know where to head next. So let me explain how I did what I did, and then I'll go over the results with you guys. So if we go to my professions, my laser sniper and BLP sniper is level 84. Well, I wanted to go with something much lower level, and I need to skill some Mindforce. My Mindforce professions lag horribly. In fact, if we look at my Pyro, my Pyro hit is level 26. My Cryo hit's level 21. So I decided to come skill some low-level Mindforce chips here at North Swamp Camp while I did this experiment. Now, my looter professions are in the 40s. So that is much, much higher than a new player would have, but much, much lower than where I would really like my looter professions to be. But that all being said, I decided coming here would be a great way to skill some low-level Mindforce chips, and I had some low-level Mindforce chips I needed to decay out and skill anyway. So what I used is I used the Neocyon 70B Mindforce Implant Limited. That absorbs 20% of the item's decay whenever you have a chip equipped. And then I've used, right now I'm using the Cryogenic Nano Chip 2 Limited with a Kinetic 4 Limited amp on it and a P20 extender. And before that, I used a Combustive Attack Nano Chip 1 with a Kinetic 3 amp and the extender, the P20. So between the extender and the implant, I was taking 40% of the decay off the chip, which meant that it was using shrapnel much more efficiently, and there was much less chip decay, so the chip lasted me a lot longer. That was one way that I was able to better use the shrapnel that I was getting in my loot. So in having that set up, what I came here to see was, given the skills that I have, obviously they're much, much higher skills than a new player would have, but I still wanted to see what kind of results could I get as far as making Blazar fragments drop. What kind of results could I get that would it make me feel comfortable telling a new player, hey, it would still be a good idea to start off at Camp Icarus, hunt some puny creatures, get some skills up, then your first move out the gate, just come to North Swamp Camp and hunt some Exarosaurs until your eyes bleed. Would that still be the advice that I would give? So what I did is I made about 1,300 kills this morning, which took me from rank 24.5 Codex to rank 25. And in that 12 to 1,300 kills, it cost me about 270 ped TT cycled in order to make those kills happen. So that is decay and ammo burn together. Now, I had 270 TT out. I had 280 TT in. So I was actually TT positive. That is because 1,300 kills is not a very big run. Now, the first thing I want to say before we get to Blazar fragment drops and skills and all that is TT value I expect to be 95%. And I know that long term it's going to be 95%. Why do I know that? For one very simple reason. And this is a concept I know a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around. Mindark has to be able to keep the servers on for the game to continue to exist. And in order to keep those servers on, they have to pay their electric bill, they have to pay their employees. In order for Mindark to be able to make those payments, they have to give us back less loot than we put out there. So if I put out 100 ped TT in decay and ammo burn, I have to get back 95 ped TT, because that's where Mindark has to make their 5 ped off me. I know this is going to be true long term, and I'm fine with that, because that is exactly why I am always focusing on the markup. The markup is where I'm going to be able to make up that 5% difference and get to break even. The markup is where hopefully I can make up more than that 5% difference and get to profit. But I know that in order for the game to continue to exist, in order for the bills to continue to get paid, if I cycle 100 ped, Mindark has to keep 5 and I have to get 95 back. Now, this is a long-term statistic. When I say long-term, I'm talking over millions, tens of millions, and hundreds of millions of ped cycled. I'm not talking over, 1,300 kills or 300 ped cycled. So, in my 270 ped cycled experiment this morning with my small 1,300 kills, what I was able to accomplish was A, 270 ped out, 280 ped in, which puts me right in the 103 to 105% TT range. I know that that's going to drop to 95%. I expect it should be at 95%. But in that very, very small sample size, it was 103 to 105. That's fine. But that is not what I expected. What I expected was 95. So let's just stick with that number right there. Let's forget that I actually had real results of 280. Let's assume that instead of a 270 ped cycle, it had been a 250 ped cycle, because that's close enough. So if it had been a 250 ped cycle, and if I'd had 95% returns, which I should have long term, then I should have actually lost 12.5 ped. That would be 5% of 250 would be 12.5 ped. So in that 250 ped cycle, how many Blazar fragments was I able to get to drop? Almost exactly 250. I think it was like 249. So looking at Blazar fragments, you can see I'm up to 315 now. But at Blazar fragments, we can see that they're currently 100,000% markup, which means that they are 10 ped per 1,000 Blazar fragments you have. So if I've got 1,000 Blazar fragments, I can sell them for 10 ped. So I was able to get 250 Blazar fragments to drop in that 270 ped cycle. So again, let's call it a 250 ped cycle. So that being the case, what that means is that I was able to get 1/4 of 1,000. 1,000 being worth 10 ped. That means that the markup on those Blazar fragments was 2.5 ped. So I was able to generate 2.5 ped worth of markup from Blazar fragments in a 250 ped cycle. Now let's assume, and this is again a very, very small sample size to be making assumptions from, but let's assume that for every 250 ped I could cycle, I could get 250 Blazar fragments. That means if I cycle 1,000 ped, I would have 1,000 Blazar fragments with 10 ped worth of value. That's really not horrible. That is indeed a nerfed drop rate from what it used to be back in the day. However, that is still a pretty good drop rate. So let's look at it at the 250 ped cycled, and let's stick with that cycle size. So what that means is that I should have lost 12.5 ped. That's what Mindark should have been able to make in order to pay the bills, because I cycled 250 ped. However, the markup on the Blazar fragments I was able to farm is worth 2.5 ped. So that means that if I sold those to other players, then I would be at a 10 ped loss instead of a 12.5 ped loss. Now the question becomes, is the skills that I gained in that 250 ped cycle worth 10 ped or more? If the answer is yes, then technically the run was break even or even profitable. If the answer is no, then the run would have been at a loss, even after markup. Now, I did not track the skills that carefully, so I cannot really go into a deep dive of here's how much each of the skills was worth, and if I was to ship them out, here's how much I could sell them for. But I can tell you, I did gain a considerable number of skills because of the fact that I'm skilling Mindforce and because my Mindforce is so low. So I don't know what the exact number is, but those skills did have quite a bit of value. The reason I picked Mindforce particularly to skill was because I knew that I was going to get quite a bit of skills. And this is where I think new players watching these videos and trying to find ways to play smarter, not harder, this is where I think they overlook something very important. When you're a brand new player, your looter skills aren't level 46, they're level 0. Your Mindforce skills aren't level 20 or 25, they're level 0. Your BLP isn't level 84, it's level 0. So the first thing that I think a lot of people get wrong whenever they come to North Swamp Camp right out the gate, they start playing, they hunt a couple of puny creatures for a couple of days to get some small amount of skills, and then they come here right out the gate to go after the Blazar fragments for the markup. But what they forget right out the gate is you're a new player. You have 0 skills in your avatar. And those skills do have value because you can ship skills out and sell them. Well, the system is rewarding you with 2 things. Thing A is loot, and that's what gets all of our attention. But thing B is skills. So as a new player, you're going to get a whole lot of skills as part of your returns. That means as a new player, you're probably going to get less loot because you're getting more skills. Versus an older, more experienced player that already has a lot of skills is probably going to get more loot, less skills. This is why new players are going to skill very, very quickly and old players are going to skill very, very slowly. This is also why new players are probably going to have a little bit worse loot and older players are going to have a little bit better loot. Because those skills have value, and the returns the game is giving us is skills plus loot. So if a new player is looking strictly at their loot, they're going, man, these returns are really not that great, the composition isn't that great. Well, what about your skills? Well, yeah, I skilled through 19 levels while I was there for 3 days. Okay, well, there's no way I could possibly skill through 19 levels in 3 days. If I played 24 hours a day around the clock, I wouldn't be able to skill 19 levels in 3 days. It would just be absolutely impossible. However, for a new player, it might actually be doable because the skills have value and they're part of the loot too. So looking at the Mindforce, that's why I wanted to use Mindforce instead of BLP. I could have used a BLP weapon, but my BLP is level 84. I'm going to get virtually no skills that way, which means that it's all going to be loot. So to really put myself in a position closer to what a new player would experience, that's why I specifically picked Mindforce. And I did get quite a bit of skills. I actually got my Pyro hit to level 26. It was 25. I don't know where in 25 it was, but it was not the high end of 25. I promise you that. So, that being said, is it still viable to tell a new player, look, start off at Camp Icarus, hunt some puny creatures, get your skills up, then head over to North Swamp Camp to focus on Exarosaurs because of the markup from the Blazar fragments? And I believe the answer is an astounding yes. Even though they have nerfed the drop rate, even though you're going to get fewer Blazar fragments than you would have back in the day before I put that video out and before this became the popular thing to do, the Blazar fragments still have very high, very reliable markup. And that hasn't changed. But the other thing is, you can still rely on them to drop. And maybe it's not going to be enough to get a new player to even. Maybe with that 5 ped that you're losing on every 100 ped cycled so Mindart can keep the lights on and pay the bills, maybe that markup still isn't enough to cover that 5 ped. Maybe the markup's not high enough to cover it. Maybe the drop rate isn't enough to get them to drop fast enough to be able to have a big enough stack for that markup to cover the entire thing. But here's the thing, it doesn't necessarily have to. Because if you're able to make up a portion of that loss with that markup, and you're able to grasp this concept very early in your career, that Mindart's going to take part of the money you put out there to pay the bills, and the markup is going to be what you have to focus on in order to try and make up that differential, then you are going to be miles ahead of the game. I talk to people every day who say, bro, I played for 10 years, And it took me 10 years to figure out that Mindark has to take part of my money to pay the bills, and the markup has to be where I make up the difference. I talked to a guy the other day. He said, I feel really kind of ashamed to admit this. He said, I watched your videos for almost a year, and I heard you say all the time, Mindark has to take part of my money to pay the bills, so I'm always going to get less than 100% back long term. And it still took me almost a year of watching your videos for that concept to click, and for me to figure out, you're right, going after the markup is how I'm going to have to make that difference up. So if you can grasp this basic concept very early in your career, while you're still hunting puny creatures, trying to get your skills up, it's going to do wonders for you guys later on. It's going to make the game so much easier for you than it is for somebody who doesn't grasp that concept for a year, or 2 years, or 5 years, or 10 years. And by looking at that early in your career and saying, look, I know this is the amount of money I'm losing. How much did I lose to Mindark for them to be able to pay the bills? Okay, I lost X amount. Now, how much did I get back in skills that isn't counted into my TT value of my loot? And then for you to be able to look at the markup you've been able to generate and say, how much markup was I able to generate? That's going to give you a much more accurate number of what your results are than most people have. Most people don't track skills at all. Most people totally forget that the skills have value until they decide to chip out. Once they decide to chip out, they go, oh, the skills have value. Well, yeah. So are your TT returns really where you say they are? Well, no, that's just the actual TT value of the loot. That's all this up here in the corner that's coming across the screen. I've never actually tracked that. So what are your skills actually worth? Most people can't tell you. One of my goals for a long time has always been to get my evade skill to 10,000 skill points. Because 10 ped of TT worth of evade skill and a brand new avatar is going to take you from 0 skill points of evade to roughly 1900-ish skill points. That same 10 ped TT implant, if you already have 10,000 skill points of evade, is only going to take you to 10,007. And the reason that's important is because once you can get to that point, that's the point where you can sit there and say, okay, you know, really, I could chip out 2 or 3 points of evade, and to me it's only 2 or 3 points, but the TT value is going to be, you know, 10, 12, 15 ped, whatever it is, because I've got 10,000 plus points of it. So at that point, it can become a money maker for you. The actual skills in the game can be chipped out regularly. You don't have to wait till you get to 30,000 skill points to start chipping out. So one of the things I've always wanted to do is get my skill points past 10,000 when it comes to evade, because once it's past 10,000, I could actually chip out about 10 ped TT every 7 points. It's not going to actually affect my evader profession. It's not actually going to affect my evader level. It would just give me the ability to chip out 10 ped TT every 7 points without affecting my evader profession really at all. So that's always been one of my goals, and that's one of the reasons that I don't necessarily track my skills down to exactly what they're worth per hunt, but I try and keep a pretty good eye on my skill levels as far as where the skill points are per skill, as far as where the professions are, because of how exceedingly valuable the skills can be in game. So looking at the experiment that I did today, my advice to new players in 2023 is still, when you start at Camp Icarus, pick a puny creature, and focus on one type of puny creature for a couple of days, maybe a week, if you're hardcore grinding it. It can be the blue buffaloes, however you pronounce it, Catadaragus, however you pronounce it. I just call them blue buffalo. Or it can be Burklide. But pick one, grind it out for a couple of days or a week, and get used to the game, get used to the trade terminal, get used to all that, get you some skills up. And once you have some skills up, once you're, you know, level 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there, and you've got some well-rounded skills after a good hard week of grinding with your trade terminal weapons, head over to North Swamp Camp and start farming these Exarosaurs till your eyes bleed, because those Blazar fragments do still drop. And even though the nerf rate is dropped, they still have really good, reliable markup on them. And this is still going to be the best opportunity for markup that new players are going to have right out the gate, that requires very little effort, very little game knowledge, very little skills, very little specialized equipment. Now, are you going to get the same results that I got using TT equipment? Probably not. are you going to get the same results that I got using low-level skills and getting much more skills and and the way that's going to affect your loot and your composition and all that? Probably not. But you will at least be started. And once you're started, once you can start building on that, that's whenever you can start building your skills to a point where you're getting less and less skills and it's harder and harder to grind those levels out. That's where you can start looking at, okay, I finally have the skills to move past TT weapons, so hey, I can start using low-level Mindforce chips. At some point, you'll even be able to start climbing the Armatrix ladder, which will then open you up to being able to go hunt other creatures. But the biggest thing is the markup is reliable. We know the Blazar fragments drop. We know they drop fairly regularly and reliably, and that gives the new players an opportunity to be focusing on markup, to stop focusing on the TT returns, and to be able to focus on something that's going to make up for those TT losses early, to get you used to doing that, and then to get you to where you can try and find other opportunities to do so. One of the biggest questions I always get is, what should I be hunting? Well, I don't know. Based off your skills, based off your profession levels, based off your weapon setup, what mob can you go hunt that is going to provide good, reliable markup? That is always the question. It's not what mob can your HP handle, or what mob can your evade handle, or what mob can your weapon handle. The question is, given all your skills and all your gear, what mob will allow you to go after the most markup? Well, guess what? As a new player, if you start by focusing on these level 3 Exosaurs as soon as you can, yes, you'll have to bang out some puny creatures at Camp Icarus for a week or so, but after that, if you can start focusing on these until your eyes bleed, and focus on the markup from the Blazar fragments, then you will be able to start learning about the game and researching the game. You won't ever have to ask me that question, because you will in very short order be able to start identifying creatures that have loot that will let you go after markup, and you'll know where you want to go after the level 3 Exosaurs. So whenever you have the skills to be able to use better gear, whenever you have the funds to be able to get better gear, you will know where those opportunities are and where you want to go after them next. Someday, you'll go, yeah, I want to end up in the Moloch instance because of the loot pool that it has and the high markup, high demand loot that the Molochs drop regularly, and they give me the 1 in a billion shot at the uber rare Titan armor. So that might be where you want to be as an in-game player once you've got in-game skills and in-game gear. But as a new player, where do you start off? And I still think that these level 3 Exosaurs are the best spot to send somebody right after they get a couple of days worth of skills from some puny creatures at Camp Icarus. I still think these Blazar fragments having the reliable drop rate and the reliable markup is going to be the best way for new players to start to understand how important markup is, because Mindark has to take money from us in order to pay the bills. Otherwise the game ceases to exist, the servers go down, the electricity gets cut off. We have to be able to make that up, and we're only going to be able to make up that money via markup. So the Blazar fragments having a reliable drop rate, even if it has been nerfed, them having reliable markup that we can count on, is a great way to get this concept established early and to help mitigate those losses early. So guys, I will leave it there for today, but this is going to continue to be my advice to new players in 2023 and moving forward, even with the nerf drop rate. So I've got a lot more content planned for you guys in the coming days. Migration is getting ready to start later this week. I'm going to be doing that. I've got some stuff I want to shoot on Arcadia, Cyrene, Next Island, and Tulun. I've got a lot more planned for you guys, but we're going to leave it here for today. So if you're a new player, right out the gate, spend you about a week at Camp Icarus with your TT weapons, getting those skills up, then head over here to North Swamp Camp and start just doing these level 3 Exosaurs until your eyes bleed for these sweet, sweet Blazar fragments, for that sweet, sweet, reliable markup. Guys, I'm going to leave it right there. Head over to earnped.com, because when you earn, we earn. That's by far the best way you can help us. Simply use the links on the website to go to hideout.tv. Hideout will automatically add us as a redemption option for your hideout points. Guys, also, if you would, please do us a huge favor. Hit the bell icon, hit the subscribe button. It takes 1 second. It's absolutely free. And once you hit them one time, you never have to hit them again. That will not only help us out and help the channel out, but you will stay on top of whenever we post new content. You will always be kept in the loop. And if you would, do us the favor, when you're watching these videos, take the half a second, it's free, hit that like button on every single video. because we've got haters sitting out there waiting to hit the dislike button every time we post a video. And when you guys will hit those videos for us, we know it only takes you half a second, but it does huge, huge things for us. It gets us way more exposure. YouTube puts us in front of way more people, and it's people who are engaged in MMOs, real cash economy gaming, PC gaming, and a lot of times it's the very first time they've ever heard of Entropia. So yes, it gives us new people to watch the channel, but it also gets new people interested in the game. And then guess what? They start watching the videos, they learn about the game, now they're downloading it, now they're at Camp Icarus, now in short order they're going to be at North Swamp Camp. And this can end up being somebody who ends up being a friend of yours or a society mate, somebody that may buy something off you, and the only reason that person may well end up in game is because right now, right here, you hit those 3 buttons for us, and every time you watch a video you hit that like button. I get messages literally every single week from people who are brought into this game because you guys keep hitting those like buttons, because you guys keep hitting that subscribe button, and because YouTube keeps giving us more reach to people who are interested in MMO gaming. So guys, thank you for helping us do that. Thank you for helping us to make the game a better place and helping get more people into the community, into the economy, because it just helps everybody out, including y'all. So we really appreciate it when you do it for us because it helps all around. So thank you so much for hitting those 3 buttons. We'll be back with more for you later this week. Till then, sip sip, smack smack, take care, Stevies.